The countdown to the Philippines' Big One is speeding up, and the West Valley Fault is now 368 years overdue for a devastating rupture that could devastate Manila. Imagine this: 13 million people living, working, and sleeping directly above a 100-kilometer fracture in the Earth that has not released its pressure since 1658. That's nearly 4 centuries of tectonic strain accumulating beneath schools, hospitals, skyscrapers, and residential neighborhoods. And scientists agree on one chilling certainty: this fault will rupture. The only unknown is when. But here's what has seismologists deeply alarmed right now. In just the last 30 days, the Philippines has recorded 847 earthquakes. The normal average is only 8 to 12. That's roughly 70 times the usual level of seismic activity. And each of these tremors isn't merely shaking the surface. It is transferring stress directly onto the West Valley Fault, like adding tension to a spring already compressed to its absolute limit. The recent magnitude 7.4 earthquake in Mindanao, the magnitude 6.9 disaster in Cebu that claimed 79 lives. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a cascading chain reaction channeling energy straight toward the capital. When the West Valley Fault finally ruptures, models forecast 60 to 90 seconds of extreme shaking. More than 170,000 buildings destroyed and a death toll that could surpass 34,000 in a single night. Is the 2025 earthquake swarm the final trigger that unleashes the big one? Or has Metro Manila already run out of time? The West Valley Fault extends 100 kilometers through the core of the Philippine capital region. It passes directly beneath Quezon City, Makati, Pasig, Marikina, and Muntinlupa. The most densely populated urban corridor in the entire country sits on top of this geological fracture. Over 13 million people live within its immediate impact zone. The fault extends from Bulacan in the north through Metro Manila and into Cavite and Laguna to the south. It cuts through business districts, residential neighborhoods, informal settlements, and critical infrastructure. Schools, hospitals, government buildings, and high-rise towers stand directly above the rupture zone. Every structure faces the same threat. Historical records reveal a disturbing pattern. The West Valley Fault ruptures on a cycle of 400 to 600 years between major events. The last confirmed rupture occurred in 1658. That was 368 years ago. By any geological measure, this fault is dangerously overdue. PHIVOLCS. Scientists project the inevitable rupture will generate a magnitude 7.2 earthquake or higher. Ground shaking will last between 60 and 90 seconds. The fault could displace the Earth's surface by up to 4 m in some locations. Buildings, roads, and bridges will face forces they were never designed to withstand. Understanding what overdue means requires thinking about how faults accumulate energy. Imagine a massive spring being compressed year after year. Each day that passes without release adds more tension to the system. The longer the interval between ruptures, the more energy builds, and that energy has nowhere to go except out. For 368 years, tectonic forces have been loading stress onto the West Valley Fault. The Philippine Sea Plate continues pushing. The pressure continues building. The fault remains locked. Every year without rupture means more stored energy waiting for release. Fival CS Director Renadu Solidum has been clear in his warnings. The West Valley Fault will move. This is not speculation. It is geological certainty. The earthquake will happen. The only unknown is the exact timing. But the data suggests the window is narrowing, and 13 million people remain directly in the path of what scientists describe as an inevitable catastrophe. The Philippines does not simply sit on fault lines. It is the fault line. The archipelago occupies the most complex tectonic intersection on the planet. Four massive plates converge beneath the 7,641 islands in a collision zone unlike anywhere else on Earth. The Philippine Sea Plate dives eastward beneath the archipelago. The Pacific Plate schwes westward with relentless force. The Eurasian plate presses down from the north. The Sunda plate pushes up from the south. These four giants meet directly beneath Philippine territory. The result is a geological pressure cooker where stress has nowhere to dissipate. Compare this to other seismically active regions. Japan faces interactions between two plates. California sits along a two-plate boundary. The Philippines deals with 4. The complexity multiplies the danger exponentially. Energy builds from every direction simultaneously, and that energy must eventually release. The only questions are where and when. For centuries, this unique configuration created a predictable rhythm. The Philippines typically experiences around 100 measurable earthquakes yearly. Roughly 20 cause significant damage. Quakes occur every few days, releasing tension gradually in isolated events. With regional impacts, the pattern was consistent. Scientists could anticipate the general frequency even if they could not predict specific events. But 2025 has shattered that pattern completely. The rhythm that held for generations has broken. What was predictable has become chaotic. What was manageable has become alarming. The archipelago functions as an interconnected stress distribution network. Major fault systems including the West Valley Fault, East Valley Fault, Philippine Fault Zone, and Manila Trench do not operate independently. They connect through mechanical stress transfer. When one fault moves, others respond. Dr. Deo Carlo Lamas at the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology describes it as a heartbeat pulsing beneath the entire archipelago. Each earthquake relieves tension in one location but simultaneously redistributes stress to neighboring systems. The process never truly ends. Pressure shifts but never disappears. And right now that pressure is building faster than anyone anticipated. The heartbeat is accelerating. September 2025 delivered the first major warning. A magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck Cebu with devastating force. Least 79 people died. Buildings collapsed across the Visayas region. Emergency responders scrambled to rescue survivors from the rubble. The disaster shocked the nation, but it was only the beginning. 10 days later, the situation escalated dramatically. October 17th saw a powerful magnitude 7.4 quake strike Mindanao. Only hours later, a magnitude 6.9 aftershock hit. Researchers describe this as a double earthquake, two major shocks occurring back-to-back along the same fault network. The event is uncommon. The consequences are severe. At least 10 lives were lost. More than 1,000 people were injured. Areas that endured the first impact were devastated by the second. The data points to an extraordinary surge. During the last 30 days alone, the Philippines has logged 847 earthquakes. The typical monthly average usually falls between 8 and 12. That equals more than a 70-fold rise. In seismic activity, microquake occurrences have more than doubled compared to past years since January. The figures are overwhelming and still increasing. Yet frequency by itself does not fully define the threat. What concerns scientists most is the pattern detected by advanced monitoring systems. These quakes are not isolated. Every event transfers strain to nearby fault systems in a synchronized chain, never previously observed. Advanced CS modeling reveals something never seen before. The earthquake swarm is forming a mechanical link across the entire Western Pacific. Energy from each tremor does not simply fade, it moves. Dr. Deo Carlo Lamas describes the process clearly. Each earthquake reduces pressure in one region while simultaneously shifting stress to adjacent faults like a domino effect. This mechanism produces a cascading sequence. Pressure released in Mindanao migrates toward the Visayas. Strain from Cebu spreads toward Luzon. Every earthquake pushes energy closer to Metro Manila. The West Valley Fault sits at the end of this chain. It absorbs cumulative stress from the entire swarm. Each tremor across the archipelago adds pressure to a system already 368 years overdue for catastrophic release. When an earthquake strikes, the energy does not stay local. It propagates through the Earth's crust at 8 kilometers per second. Stress waves race outward, physically pushing on distant fault lines and fundamentally changing their stability. Scientists call this process Coulomb stress transfer, and it explains why earthquakes in Mindanao threaten Manila. Most people assume earthquakes are isolated events. Energy releases, the shaking stops, and the danger passes. But that is not how the planet works. Seismic energy from one earthquake literally loads pressure onto neighboring fault systems. The phenomenon has been documented repeatedly throughout history. The 1992 Landers earthquake in California triggered quakes across multiple American states. The 2004 Sumatra tsunami affected fault systems across the entire Pacific Basin. The 2012 Indian Ocean magnitude 8.6 earthquake created cascading perturbations that reached Japan. The science is proven. The mechanics are understood. The implications are terrifying. What makes 2025 different is the speed and scale. Previous stress transfer events took days or weeks to propagate across fault networks. The current patterns are happening in minutes to hours. 7 major fault systems are responding simultaneously to Philippine earthquake activity. Coordinated seismic movement on this scale has never been documented in scientific history. Dr. Ross Stein, from the United States Geological Survey, describes the situation as earthquake clustering on an international scale. The Philippines is not just triggering local events. It is mechanically connected to fault systems spanning the entire Western Pacific. The direct connection to the West Valley Fault grows clearer with each tremor. The Manila Trench shows dangerous pressure accumulation. The Philippine Sea Plate boundary experiences elevated seismic background activity. Each Mindanao earthquake loads pressure onto Luzon fault systems. Visaya's aftershock pushes energy northward. The West Valley Fault absorbs cumulative stress from the entire swarm. It functions as the terminal point in a cascading chain of pressure transfer. Every earthquake across the archipelago adds weight to a system already compressed beyond historical limits. The domino effect is not theoretical. It is measurable, and the dominoes are falling toward Manila. The moment the West Valley Fault ruptures, Metro Manila faces 60 to 90 seconds of violent shaking. Ground acceleration will exceed the design limits of most buildings. Liquefaction will transform reclaimed land and low-lying areas into unstable soil that swallows structures whole. The destruction will unfold faster than anyone can react. PHIVOLCS and Metro Manila Development Authority estimate catastrophic structural damage. Over 170,000 buildings will be damaged or destroyed. High-rises in Makati and Bonifacio Global City face collapse risks from forces they were never engineered to withstand. Informal settlements housing millions in densely packed slums will experience near total devastation. Schools filled with children, hospitals packed with patients, government buildings coordinating emergency response all sit directly in the rupture zone. Infrastructure will fail in cascading sequence. Bridges and elevated highways will collapse, cutting evacuation routes. The MRT and LRT systems will suffer catastrophic damage, stranding millions. Water mains will rupture, flooding streets while leaving survivors without drinking water. Gas lines will break, triggering fires that spread through collapsed neighborhoods. The power grid will fail across Metro Manila, plunging the capital into darkness. The Japan International Cooperation Agency conducted detailed casualty modeling. Their worst-case projections estimate over 34,000 deaths. Injuries will exceed 100,000. More than 1 million people will be displaced from destroyed homes. Secondary deaths from fires, disease, and lack of medical care will continue. 4 weeks. The first 72 hours will become a nightmare of compounding. Crisis. Hospitals will be overwhelmed or destroyed. Emergency responders will be unable to reach victims trapped beneath rubble. Traffic gridlock on damaged roads will prevent evacuation. Water and food shortages will begin within hours as supply chains collapse. The economic devastation extends beyond calculation. Metro Manila generates 36% of Philippine GDP. Business district. Destruction will the national economy. Recovery timelines will be measured in decades, not years. When the West Valley Fault breaks, it will not simply damage a city. It will fundamentally reshape the Philippines in 90 seconds of destruction that generations will struggle to rebuild. PHYVLCs operates a monitoring network spanning the Philippine archipelago. Seismic monitoring stations constantly observe ground motion. Real-time analysis identifies earthquakes within minutes of their occurrence. The network reflects decades of scientific research and technological progress. Yet against the West Valley Fault, these systems confront a fundamental constraint no technology can bypass. Stress waves move through the Earth's crust at 8 kilometers per second. This velocity surpasses every human response system ever created. Seismic detection requires 2 to 3 minutes to interpret earthquake data. Tsunami modeling needs 5 to 10 minutes to estimate wave arrival times. International communication takes 10 to 15 minutes to distribute multi-country alerts. Public warning networks need 15 to 30 minutes to issue evacuation orders for a fault located directly beneath Metro Manila. These timelines lose all meaning when the West Valley Fault ruptures. Shaking starts before any alert can be delivered. Approximately 13 million people would have virtually no advance warning. The earthquake strikes before the notification. Existing warning infrastructure faces 4 major constraints. Each nation monitors its own fault systems separately with limited international coordination. Tsunami models assume a single earthquake source rather than cascading events. Communication delays slow rapid multi-country alerts. Data processing systems cannot manage simultaneous seismic signals from multiple sources. The tsunami danger intensifies these challenges. Manila Bay remains exposed to waves generated by earthquakes along the Manila Trench. If several fault systems rupture in sequence, their tsunamis may merge through wave superposition, producing amplified destruction. Current warning systems were never designed for such complex. The infrastructure reality is staggering. Across 7 Pacific countries, 500 million people live within tsunami evacuation zones. No protocols exist for simultaneous multinational disasters. Evacuation capacity was designed for single-country events, not cascading regional catastrophes. Dr. Katsuichiro from the University of Bristol warns that cascading earthquake hazards represent a new class of disaster that current monitoring infrastructure simply cannot handle. We need to completely rethink warning systems for the age of stress transfer. The technology designed to save lives was built for a different era. The threats have evolved. The systems have not. PHYVLCS has intensified monitoring of the West Valley Fault to unprecedented levels. Scientists maintain 24-hour surveillance of seismic activity along the entire 100 kilometers rupture zone. New monitoring stations have been deployed across Metro Manila. Stress accumulation tracking continues around the clock. Public awareness campaigns warn residents about the inevitable earthquake. The scientific community is doing everything possible within current capabilities, but critical preparedness gaps persist throughout Metro Manila. Building code compliance remains inconsistent across the metropolis. Many structures were built before modern Seismic standards existed. Informal settlements housing millions offer zero earthquake resistance. Evacuation routes pass through areas that will become impassable after major structural collapses. Emergency supply stockpiles fall far short of what 13 million people will need. Community-level initiatives provide some hope. Bearing conduct regular earthquake drills to familiarize residents with emergency procedures. Families develop emergency plans, identifying safe meeting points. Schools teach children the duck, cover, and hold technique. Government campaigns encourage every household to prepare go bags with essential supplies. These efforts save lives, but they cannot prevent the destruction. Experts agree on what must change. Building retrofitting programs need massive expansion to strengthen vulnerable structures. Residents in highest risk zones require relocation options before disaster strikes. International coordination must improve to handle cascading disasters affecting multiple countries simultaneously. Investment in early warning technology needs to accelerate despite the fundamental speed limitations. The psychological burden weighs heavily on Manila's residents. 13 million people live with daily uncertainty about when their world will shake apart. Officials must balance raising awareness against creating panic. The challenge of preparing for something inevitable but unpredictable tests every community. The race against geological time continues. With every passing day, each earthquake in the ongoing swarm accelerates the timeline. Each tremor loads additional stress onto the West Valley Fault. No technology exists that can prevent the rupture. Only preparation can determine how many survive when it comes. The window for action is closing. The fault does not wait. The pressure continues building, and 13 million people remain directly in its path. The West Valley Fault will rupture. This is not speculation. It is not fear-mongering. It is a geological certainty supported by centuries of seismic evidence and the consensus of scientists who study the system. The fault has ruptured before, and it will rupture again. The only unknown is when 368 years of accumulated tectonic pressure will exceed the rock strength. When that moment comes, 60 to 90 seconds of violent shaking could permanently transform the Philippines. More than 170,000 buildings may collapse or suffer severe damage. Over 34,000 people could die in the initial impact, and 1 million residents could lose their homes. The nation's economic center could be devastated in minutes. The 2025 earthquake swarm has shifted this threat from distant possibility to immediate danger. In just 30 days, 847 earthquakes have struck the archipelago, roughly 70 times the normal frequency. Each tremor adds stress to already strained fault systems. The magnitude 7.4 Mindanao earthquake and the magnitude 6.9 disaster are not isolated events. They represent a cascading sequence directing energy toward Metro Manila. Coulomb stress transfer shows that seismic energy moves across regions, shifting pressure from Mindanao through the Visayas toward Luzon, where the West Valley Fault absorbs the cumulative strain. Warning systems cannot protect a city built directly above a fault. Shaking begins before alerts can be issued, leaving 13 million residents with virtually no advance notice. Preparation becomes the only decisive factor for survival. Scientists now recognize that fault systems across the Western Pacific are interconnected, meaning one major earthquake can influence others within minutes. This marks a new era of cascading disasters that can outpace human response. For families living above the West Valley Fault, this reality brings daily uncertainty. With pressure continuing to build beneath Manila, the question is no longer if the fault will rupture, but when, and how many will be ready when it does.